Hello, my name is Kirk. I'm a senior principal engineer working with GSE team. This video is dedicated to looking at the Microsoft SQL Server T-SQL database tool, DBCC CheckDB. We'll discuss why and when DBCC CheckDB should be run, along with command options that determine the level of database checking and runtime involved. So a few points we want to discuss before we get into the demo. DBCC CheckDB is a T-SQL tool looking at the logical and physical integrity of all the objects within a given SQL Server database. We have some repair options that also are available, and we have something called tab lock as an option as well that involves the use or non-use of a snapshot of the database. We're going to look at the estimate only option, why we would want to use that, and that's relative to tempdb use during a CheckDB process. Also, we're going to look at physical only, why we would want to use that option and when. And we're also going to look at how we can control the number of processors involved in the CheckDB process with something called MaxStop. So at this point, we're going to look at some of the examples of what we would see when we run DBCC CheckDB. So the first command itself literally will check everything that's possible for DBCC CheckDB to look at within a given database. So here are the results. The line of return that we're most interested in when we run this is the number of allocation errors and consistency errors found in the database. So I have a healthy AdventureWorks 2019 database, so everything's coming back with no errors. Now, this is also a small database, so this runs really quickly. If we have a much larger database, for instance, 100 times the size of this one, it's going to take much longer to run this. And many people wonder how often we should try to run DBC CheckDB. And usually the SQL masters will tell you, you want to try to run it as soon as possible. If there's any inconsistencies or any kind of software damage in the database, you want to discover that as quickly as possible and deal with it. So the next option we're going to look at is the one called with physical only. It's the same command, except in this case, it's literally only checking the physical entity or the structure of the database itself. It usually will run much faster than a full check. And that's why we would want to run this in production environments where we have limitations on our maintenance times. We also have another option called with tab lock. So one thing we need to understand about DBCC CheckDB, one of the first things it does is creates a snapshot file that is contained in the tempdb database. And there are times when we may not be able to use tempdb for something like that with a CheckDB process. So whenever we designate with tab lock, we're telling DBCC CheckDB not to create a snapshot file. So it's not going to occupy that space in tempdb, and it usually will run faster as a result of that. One of the other things that we can run as an option is with estimate only. This particular command will tell us how much space we would expect to have used within our tempdb database when running CheckDB. And here's an example of the output of that. It comes back in kilobytes. So this is around 230 megs. One other option we have is with MaxStop. Now, whenever DBCC CheckDB runs, it tries to use as many processors as it needs to run in parallel. It wants to run multiple threads in order to try to execute as quickly as possible. So there may be limitations as to the number of processors we would want to allow to be run in this process. So we can limit that with the with max stop statement. In this case, I'm telling SQL to only use one processor for our CheckDB run. And when we do that, that's less processors dedicated to this, but it will usually take longer to run your DBCC CheckDB. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the repair options. So there are different repair options. The most drastic is what we call repair allow data loss. You literally may lose data whenever we use this option to try to repair a database, I should say, that's coming back with errors. Or we could use repair rebuild. Repair rebuild is considered a soft repair option. And what we mean by that is it guarantees that we're not going to lose available data in the database when we run this. So the way this command is laid out, we'll be using the context of the master database. Whenever we do something like this, we must put the database in single user mode in order to allow a repair operation. So in this case, we'll run that. Now, we have the option here of estimate only. And once again, the estimate only is going to tell us how much space we're going to give up on TempDB to do this. Our snapshot file is going to occupy around 230 megs based on our return here. And after doing a repair with this, we would want to put it back into multi-user mode. Now with estimate only, we didn't actually run the repair. We only did the estimate. So let's take a look at running the command with the repair rebuild. Once again, let's go ahead and execute that. We're going to put it back in multi-user. So once again, the context of the master database, we're going to put it in single user mode. And in this case, we're going to execute a repair operation. This is the soft repair operation. And what you're going to see is much of what we'd see in a regular DB check. And of course, once again, we want to check for reported errors. In this case, once again, there are none. I have a good database here. And the last part of this operation is putting it back in multi-user mode. So the repair allow data loss repair command, it's exactly like the repair rebuild, except we're using the repair allow data loss. Usually we run this when we've attempted to run the repair rebuild. And the repair rebuild comes back and tells us that it could not complete the repair of the database. So our last resort without a good backup, and yes, we should use a good backup before we're forced to do a repair allow data loss. If no backup exists, this is our only option to get the database back online and available. So that concludes our demo of discussing DBCC CheckDB, considering when to use CheckDB, and some of the most common command options available. I hope this video helped you understand the value of using DBCC CheckDB when attempting to maintain a consistent and stable SQL Server database installation. Thank you for watching.